Hey everybody, how you doing today? Today I'm going to talk about tables. So I'm going to spend time looking at everything that you need to know about tables, and we're going to take an in-depth look. So a lot of times people will just skim through it, and I mean there's a lot of need for it. There are a lot of really good classes out there, but what I'm going to do here is I'm going to spend time concentrating on all the different things about a table. So if you create a table, you will know what to do with it and how to make it useful for you. So without further ado, let's get on with this lesson here. So if we look at a table here, and I have one that I created here. This example, what we're going to look at. So this is what it looks like, but let's put it into the design view, and I'm going to create a table too while we're here. So first thing that we need is an ID number. So I recommend that you have an ID number, which is going to be an auto number, and it's going to be the primary key too. So this is important because you have to have a sequential number, because each piece of data is unique. Each row is unique, and it's important. Not each piece of data, but each um, each row of data, each entry is going to be unique. Like for example, here we have the first name, and I just put in. You could name this anything you want to, but I just put EFN. So a lot of people put F name, L name, or put it together, like, I don't know, like this, putting caps, add it, and then last name. You could do this any way you want to. Or they put an underscore in between it possibly, and all lowercase or all caps. There's different ways that you could do it, but whatever works best for you. And it doesn't have to be something that's going to be legible, because let's say for example we create the first name. So the first name is, so you don't really need a format because this is text. So you can ignore this one down here. Input mask, you don't really need that because it's also text. Now input mask is something, and we'll look at that when we get down to some other ones. It's basically a mask. It sets up an entry. So like for example, you have phone number, so it's going to create the format of a phone number. But if you're dealing internationally, it might not be a good idea to use a mask, because every country has a different phone number, zip code, everything like that, and probably best just to enter the numbers. But it's up to you on using a mask. Like if you're doing something that's sort of a standard, then you might want to use an input mask. So I'm going to cancel this and get out of here. So now caption. So I could put whatever I want to here. I could leave the 3 digits first name like this, but I could also put the caption, which is what's going to be up at the heading for first name. So you could put a code here and then put the actual caption. That way it's legible, and that's what's going to appear in there. Now default value is the value that you want automatically. So like say for example, first name, I wouldn't do that. But like say for example, if you have a company and 90% of the people are technicians or something, you might put technician on the start date. So you can hear on the start date, I put the default value equals date, um, and opening close parentheses. And what the date is, that just puts the actual today's date. I could also put now in here too, and that would be the current time. But if I put the current date, that's going to be the date starting at midnight. And if you're dealing with dates like start dates and stuff like that, it's best to do that and not now possibly. Now is when you're wanting to be exact. Now I also have a validation rule in here too. So the validation rule is the data has to be within this time. So if you notice on here, I have the data validation rule is greater than or equal to 1-1-2020. So that's just an arbitrary date in here, but you could put a validation rule that no employee could start before the company started. So say if the company officially started on 1-1/2020, on the 1st of January 2020, it's not possible to have an employee before that date. So if you're going to go in there and correct some data and you accidentally type in, I don't know, March 3rd, 1990 or something like that, or 2001 instead of 2021, then it will catch that and it won't allow you to do it. Now it's not going to catch everything, but it's going to keep you from, and also I'll put now so no one can be hired after now. And I could also put date in here too, so that means anybody for today's date could be hired, but not for tomorrow's date and beyond. That way, like say for example, if you tell HR, hey, you cannot put down their start date till they actually start, because maybe you get people starting, a day late, or a lot of things happen, you have to go back and correct it for some reason. So that puts a safety feature in there. So that's kind of how a validation rule. And then the validation text is what happens if you put the wrong date in there. And I'll show an example. Now, required. Now, of course, I would not want to require this unless I wanted it set up so that they could not add somebody in the system until they actually started working. So that means this text is going to be required to do an entry. So if they're going to start in the future, I couldn't do it. So in this situation, it's probably best to leave it at no. And so you have text alignment, things like that. So date picker, and so we can look at the date picker, and for dates or never. So if you have this set up in here, that means you're going to be able to pick a date on there, and I'll show how that works. Now the finish date, there's nothing here. I don't know. I heard some rumors that a certain company, they only hire people for 3 years, and after 3 years, they let them go because their philosophy is that the employees are not going to be motivated after 3 years. And I don't know. I don't know if that's true or not, but it doesn't sound like a very good practice to me. But either way, if you wanted to, you could put a validation, default value in here for the finish date, and I could put in here something like now, like say for example, if it's 365, I could put, now equals now. If I don't want, also too, I might not want to calculate, what 365 is times 3. So I could, just to show an example, I could probably roughly calculate it in my head, get a calculator out. But say, for example, if I had some numbers that I didn't want to calculate, I might just go in here and put, let's see, date, and then I could multiply it and put some brackets here, and 365 times 3 times 3, and that way whenever I add a new entry, we'll see this in a minute, it's going to have this 3 years in the future. So validation rule, of course, leap years are not calculated in here, but we could just go, let's just leave it at that. So or we could put in here, say for example 40 years. So say we want to, not 40 years, but let's say employee's going to work 30 years, and that's going to be the time of retirement. But of course, you could just have it here just a generic, so that when it comes to that time, then that the employee has done their 30 years. Like say for a police department or the military, 20 years, whatever it may be. So we could just put in here 20 years, and I'll just put 365.25 just to get it pretty close. Of course, it's not going to be exact, but once we get to that point, once we punch it in, we could kind of know more or less when their retirement is. Of course, nothing's ever perfect with that. And of course, the validation rule is that I don't know. We don't really need a validation rule in here, but it could, we could put something in here that it has to be greater than, now plus now times 20, or now times 365 times 20. So that way, this is going to be a little bit more, but we want to make sure that they do at least 20 years. So let's make this one, let's turn this one actually to 21, and we're going to say the validation rule is that it must be greater than date and times. Now, when you do a multiplication in Access, you have to put a multiplication sign before the bracket. You can't just multiply next to the bracket like you might have done in a math class, and so you're always going to have some sort of symbol. But then you could add plus the brackets, so you could multiply within the brackets or whatever you do within the brackets, but there needs to be something that is separating. So it's got to be greater than the date that you do this entry, multiplied by 365.25 times 20. That way, just in case somebody changes the date in there. For example, they might change some sort of let me think. For example, somebody is putting an entry and they need to put this guy in there for 25 years or something for some reason, or maybe something else happened, but at least it's going to prevent them from doing it too early. And so the validation rule is date times 365.25 times 20. And I forgot a bracket here. So you might get a message, and sometimes you need to just kind of look at this data. And you can, if you can't really see what you're doing here, you can click the zoom and make it bigger. So this is what the code looks like. The date in brackets times 365.25 times 20. And this zoom, it makes things a lot better. So here's this is the default value. So this is what the default value is going to be. Now, is this required? I guess we can go ahead and make this required, because we want there to be something in there when we first do the entry. So it's not going to be indexed, and we're not worried about duplicates here. And so this is basically what we'll talk about. Now let's go back up here to the employee ID. So the employee ID, the new values, this, we're looking at the new values. You have two options here. You have increment or random. So random means just a random number is going to appear. Increment means it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. So you're able to keep track of the order that that it was entered. Of course, you might want some sort of other value in there that's that may be, I don't know, I don't, to be honest, I don't know of any reason why you'd want a random, unless you just didn't want to keep if for some reason you didn't want that type of value, or maybe it was related to some sort of information. You don't need to worry about format. I mean, you could put a caption down here, maybe employee ID. I try to not leave spaces in the data, because like for the field name itself, I don't like to use spaces, because it can create problems. It doesn't necessarily create problems, but you always have to put brackets around it when you're doing it, and that gets to be, it add a lot of time when you're doing things over and over again. So it's best to leave a separate, independent word. So middle name. So let's say the first name and the last name. These should probably be required. So I'm going to change this to yes, and 0 length. It says you could add 0 length, but so required yes again. So that means we have to have a first name and last name. But middle name, I am leaving that out. Now the position here. Now one thing that I did with this position is it's a drop down. So what I did was I went over to the lookup, and like I said, we're gonna do this again. I just want to give you an idea of how this works. So just to have a good idea. So we're going to get this basic concept of all this, and then we're going to create a table, and we're going to make a customer table. So it's going to be basically the same information, but with a little bit different. So middle name, let's go back to position. Now position, I want the position to auto-populate to some degree. Now what I could do is go back to here, and I could put a default value as maybe technician or something. Maybe if that's like the number one position at the company, 90% of people are technicians. I I could put that. Of course, every company has a different thing, or associate, or whatever it might be. So that way, when I do the default value, that's what's going to pop up. And I don't need an input mask. Format is to text. We don't need that. We're still new with text. I'll show you where the format's going to come into play. Validation rule. We don't really need that either because we're dealing with text, so we don't have to have anything. But if you do, I'll show you where the validation. Well, I already showed you like one example. Required. I think we should require that there be a position there. So let's put a yes. But since there's a default value, there will be somebody there. And maybe to make sure that you don't make a mistake, I'm going to take this technician out because I want to show the drop down how it works. All right, so required, yes. Indexed, no, because if it's indexed, is if we're trying to keep track of that data. We don't want to. We don't need to keep track of that data. And so you can align the text a certain way if you want to. And I'm just going to leave it, general, which is going to be to the left. And so we have the age. So let's go. So we have the position. Now let's just take a look at it where we're at right here. So I'm going to save this. And we have a tight mismatch on the default value. Okay. So that one. Okay, so let's look at that's probably going to be on something like the date here. Okay, so that's okay. This might be where the problem is. Let's see here. Alright, so I'll have to go and rewrite that code in there. I did something wrong on it. But you make mistakes, and sometimes you have to figure out what they are. Learning what the error messages are. So we have this. Let's add a person. So Jane Doe. I'm not very creative on these names. So the drop down here is going to be based on what the data that's already in there, and I'll show how this works. But like, say for example, I want to add something else. So Jane Doe is an analyst, or let's say associate. Let's see. I think that's how you spell it. So Jane Doe, and say Jane Doe doesn't have a middle name. So we have the start date, the finish date. I need to change this because it's definitely not going to be that. So I'm going to make that blank. And okay, you have to have a value in here. So all right, so let's go back here and let's add a date. I'll fix that later. And okay, so see, I put that validation rule in there, so we have to put this 20 years into the future. So that's a good way to see how this test worked. So it's not going to let me do this. So I need to go at least 20 years in the future. So I'm going to do 2043. Let's see if that works. And that's not enough either. So let's go. So the date has to be greater than 365 times 0.25 times 20. Okay, so let's put, maybe I might have done something wrong there. Let's put 70 in here. No, I need to figure out what that is. So I'm going to have to escape here and take that out. Let's go back to the drawing board and look at the finish date here. So let's look at this. So the date is going to be greater. I think I might have the date is greater than. So that's what the problem is. So I had the symbol backwards. So let's go back here again and save this. So now if we go in here and the finish date is going to be say here, let's put in here 45. I should do it. Okay. So but if I put in here, say I put in here 35, it's not gonna. Okay, that's strange. Had to figure out one. I guess it's because I didn't put it in between it. I'm not using good logic here. I need to go here. Somebody probably caught the logic. I'm not catching it right now, but it's it's about putting in a logic that either restricts, it has parameters of what amount of data should be in there. So we'll go through there and look at that. So that's one of the things that you might have to do once in a while. You might have to play around with formulas until you get it right. But as far as the validation rule, we could just remove the validation rule. We don't need that to start with, and we don't need a default date in here let's see, I'm not sure if I put a greater than in here, but date, I know what it is. I multiplied when I should have did a plus in there, and that's where I made the mistake. So if we put in here plus 365 times 20, and that's where I made a mistake because I did a multiplication there. And then here it has to be greater. It has to be greater than the date, those open and close brackets, and then we have plus, and then we have parentheses 365 times 21, and so let me make that 20, and this one is what needs to be 21. So now let's go back here and look at it. So one of the things that happens is you're going to make mistakes when you're doing this, and you might be tired. It could be just false logic and other things. But we have this rule in here, and the rule is successful because we have 365 on there. Now, if I go a couple of years early, 333, it's probably not going to let me do it. See, because the date is prohibited. With a lower date. But I could put, much more. I could put 39. Hold up, let's see here. So I could put greater than 360, then the years times the date, and I guess I should put 365.25, but as long as it's greater than 365 times 20, then it's good to go, or times 21. So that's the way the validation rule works in here. So I could also put like for the age. Now I could put the default value in here for the age, and see there's already a 0 here because the default value, we're looking at the age, it's a number. Now I could, like say for example, somebody has to be 18 years old to work there. Maybe possibly 17. I don't know. Let's go ahead, and I'm going to leave the default value empty because you never know what the age of the person is going to be. But the validation rule needs to be greater than 17. So must, and the validation text must be older than 17, or must be older than 16, I guess, or 17 and older, but I'll just put older than 16. Or must be 17 or older. So that is the validation. That's what's going to appear in the text. Required, I'd say we need to have an age in there. Everybody has an age, so. And we could put the caption, I don't know, age of employee. Now, I usually don't put captions in there, so that's something that is up to you. I usually put like first name, last name, kind of like this, and start or finish, or start date and finish date, something like that. But age of employee, of course, we would know what that is. Now, salary is a currency, but so we have a double here format. We don't really need to put a format in here. You could put general number in here. If we put it as a general number, we don't need a decimal for the date. So if we look back here again, must save it. And so we're here. It's saying that some data might be lost because if it doesn't fit the validation rule, you might lose some data. So let's test what we did just now. So let's put Ken Lewis, and let's say this guy is a let's go say this is an associate. Now you can see, like in the let's back up here. You can see in the drop down there's no associate in here, but the next time we do this you will see an associate because we're adding it to the validation rule. So no middle name again, and the start date is today too. And like I'm live right now, but a lot of you are in a different time zone than me. I'm 1 hour ahead of New York's time zone. So everybody, so I'm on the next day, but it is live right now, and you can see that the date is the next day, but it's still the 23rd in the U.S. So let's put in here 16, see what happens. So must be 17 or older. So that's the validation text that we put in there. So let's put 17 in here, and okay, you know what I did wrong? I put greater than 17. So I need to put greater than 16 or greater than and equal to 17. So let's go ahead and put 18 in here. And so if I put greater than 17, that means the person's going to have to be 18 years old. And so if we have, so I shouldn't be able to, let's see, let's go ahead and do like 17.1. Okay, so I could put 17.1 in there, but of course we don't want to do this, and I'm going to put 18. And so the salary. So what I did in here is I put a couple of fields in here that will automatically add some data when I add this in here. So if I had the salary, so let's say this associate makes 30 grand a year. So, and we have and we'll talk about these later. So now this shows what, if we put it in a yearly salary, maybe we want to know what they make per hour. So this shows their hourly wage. Here it's $14.42 an hour. And billing, like say for example, if this person, because I've worked for companies and we are contracted out to the customer. So this might be, maybe when we want to amount how much we bill to the customer per hour for each employee. So whatever that might be, and then I'm sure most companies do much more than double it. So, and I want to know what how much this employee makes every couple of weeks. So of course, like most people are getting paid bi-weekly. Of course, if you're in the you might work for the government and get paid monthly, and I'll show you how to do that too. But we could put that now zip code here. We'll talk about that later. So let's go back and look at our design here. So what I did was, so here's the salary. It's a currency. So we enter whatever that currency is. I could put a default value, like say for example, like most of the people are associates, and I could just say 30,000. So that will be the number. Definitely we're going to need a salary. So let's make that required. Index, no. Just something that you really don't need to mess with here. If you do put it left, number is usually not going to be to the left. And validation rule, we don't need to put one in here. Since it's currency, it's automatically going to be numbered. The salary in here. So this is the input data. Now history is long text, and that just means it has a large number of text you could put in there. Email is hyperlinks, and we'll talk about these two later. And so let's look at the wage here. So the wage is a calculated field. So let's look at the zoom here. So the calculated field, we took the salary and I multiplied the salary divided by 52 times 40, because there's 52 weeks in a year, and then I divided that by 40 to get the 40 hours. So that way, like you hire people and you hire people at a certain yearly wage. Once you don't have to go in there and calculate it each time you hire an employee. It goes in there automatically. Of course, there's lots of different features that you could do on that, but this is just one of them. Some people get hired at a salary, but some states have different laws, and you might have to pay people by the hour if they work overtime. So this allows you to keep track of it and make it better. Of course, it's not exactly 50. You might want to do an exact calculation, or 52. And so billing, so this is what we bill the customer. So this is also a calculated field, and the calculation that I put in here is I made it an integer. So integer means it's not going to have a decimal in there. And I'll open up the wrong one. So let's look at the zoom. So the zoom here, so it's an integer. Now I just put 1.9, so let's put like 3 times the salary. So you have an employee, you send them out to do some work for one of your customers, and you pay your employee, $25 an hour, and you bill the customer $75 an hour. And I think I think it's probably even more than that, but it probably depends on the company what kind of equipment you have, because you're paying for the equipment, you're paying for a lot of other overhead that the employee's not paying for. So let's put that in there as calculated field. Bi-weekly, so I just took the wage and basically, so really I just, the wage is by the hour, and I think I miscalculated this here. So let's look at the zoom here. So I'm in the wrong one here. So bi-weekly, so we're looking at how much they would make bi-weekly, and I made one mistake here. So let's look at the zoom here. So it should be bi-weekly, should be wage times 80 and not times 40. So we could leave it at a weekly wage. I know there's some companies that pay weekly and then others that pay bi-weekly. So there are a lot of different possibilities for this, but this kind of helps you to look at it. So we'll save our data. Some data may be lost because we put those validation rules in there. So now we look here at $30,000. You can see the default value is appearing here. So this person makes $30,000, and we have their wage is $14 an hour, and when we bill the customer, we bill them $43 an hour, and the bi-weekly amount that they make is going to be $1,153 bi-weekly, and these would be the wages. Now let's say we want to hire another person here. And like I said, I'm not very creative on names. So now we have the associate in here, and everything's in alphabetical order. So let's say that we have let's hire another technician in here, and this one is I don't know, Maria, and let's say her date is tomorrow here. Oh yeah, this is one. Now the validation rule, remember, I put in here that it cannot be in the future. So let's say she started last week, and I could also change this to a different thing so that it's this plus that plus 20 years here, but I'm going to leave it like it is for now. There are many possibilities when you're dealing with Access. So age of employee. Let's go back and fix something here. All right, so we have to add a number in here. So let's make this 18. Let's just leave it at 18 for now. So we can see a technician makes 45. So let's say this is, so she's been here a little bit longer, so maybe she's making a little bit more. Of course, that wouldn't be enough time to get a raise unless she's really good at what she does. So let's say it's 50. thousand. And if we go down here, we can see that she's going to make 24 an hour. And if we bill the customer, it's going to be 72. She's working for the customer, and this is what she would make on a weekly basis, bi-weekly basis. So we have that in here. And I guess we could go ahead and change the age to greater than, so it's greater than or equal to 17. Oops, I'll put a plus. Greater than or equal to 17. Must be 17 or older, and it's required. So the salary is currency. We got that in there. We have the calculated field. Now I put on the zip code, I put a validation rule, a input mask in here. So we have to save the data before you put an input mask. Now, think about an input mask. So the one that I have on here is actually a zip code. Now, if you're dealing with an American company, then this is fine. You know, American companies only. But if you're dealing international, you don't want to do this because you're going to have a lot of crazy things. So this input mask. So next thing that you'll see here, make sure that everything's. So unfortunately, you're not able to see that. Hold up one second. I just realized that the message boxes are not appearing on the screen, and I apologize about that. So I'm going to have to change one thing here. And what I'm going to have to do is allow to see my entire screen. So I'm going to go back to a different screen real quick. I'm going to fix this one. One second here. All right, so now you're going to be able to see my entire display, and so you should be able to see it. So go back here, and we have the zip code. Now let's go. So you have the different validation rules here, or I mean input mask. So the one we had here is zip code, and I would not recommend doing this unless you have a, an American company. Now on this input mask, you could do it any way that you want to. You can have it, placeholder characters. You could do different things. Now you could try it down here and see how it works. So I could put these numbers in here, and that's fine. Of course, I think in the U.S. most of the zip codes are blank. So I mean are just 5 digits, and you don't have to have more than that. So I could have it load without the symbols, but what I could do is just hit cancel here. I'm going to delete the input mask, but you could have an input mask for like social security number, or if there's some special number that's not normal, you could create your own input mask. And I'll just so we'll save this here and look at it. So say for example we have a like for a password, for example, you might want one for a password. It doesn't really give you any options because passwords. But let's say for example we have a social security number. So this is it for a social security number. But like say for example, if I want the some other kind of number that's kind of like a social security number but something a little bit different, I could take out a couple of those zeros, and I could actually go in here and create my own. So I could just do say for example, if I had something with a couple of dashes and something like that, I could create my own, but I'm not going to. I'm going to cancel this, and I'm going to leave it blank. I don't like having an input mask on a zip code. And so we go down here now. Let's look at a couple other things. I'm not sure. So let's take a look at what we have here. Data sheet view. Now we have, say for example, we want to have add another person here. Let's see. And so he's another supervisor. So I'll slide the supervisor in here. And so his middle name is Max. And his age is 17. So that'd be a young supervisor, but just want to make sure 17 will go in here. So let's see what happens when we do 16. You should always test it after you make a change, because you never know. You could always miss some logic in there. So that's one of the keys to doing. There's no one that's a perfect database developer. Let's say this guy makes I don't know. Let's say he makes about 60. $60K, and so we're doing this. So he's making 60K, so that means he's making about 28 hour, and we bill the customer 86 if he's working on their project, and this is what his bi-weekly paycheck is going to look like, more or less. And that would be a good way, like if you hire the guy and his paycheck might not be exactly that amount, because maybe the guy works a lot of overtime. You never know. Usually the check's not going to be exactly that amount, but it's the way you can say, okay, you have the data there. You can say, okay, this is what it's going to be. So let's say here we want to add a file, an object here. So insert an object. So let's say we want to add add a chart here. So click OK, and so we add a little chart. We could add we can make these changes and go ahead and close it, and the chart's added in here. So we can add an attachment. So you could add one in here. I'm just gonna add this PNG, but you could add more in there. So like say for example, you want to add this guy's documentation, whatever it might be, some sort of I don't know, whatever the documentation may be. You might add their documents in here. I don't know, diploma, their discharge papers, things like that. So click OK, and you have the attachments there. You can see how many attachments are attached to this. And so we've gotten rid of that. Now this is a so this is going to be a URL file. So if I click on that, it will open up an email. So you could have that set up as well. So that way, and let's look at the file type. Let's go to design view, and we have the email, and the email is a hyperlink. So we have the hyperlink there. That way we can click on it. You know, if you're going through the files, you can click on that and see the person's name. So I could probably put the default in here. You know, maybe put a space in here. Well, no, leave it blank. But I could put an @ symbol. You know, put over the domain of the company. And that way, when I'm doing the email, you know, I could put like I don't know, a couple of asterisks in here. Keep putting plus signs. So put a couple of asterisks here, just kind of maybe as a placeholder. And caption, you know, I could put, you know, email address for the caption here. Don't need a format because, you know, I could put a validation rule that, you know, I don't really need one in here, but like say for example, I could put a validation rule for the minimum length or something in there, and required. So I think we should probably require email. The problem is that I have a couple of blanks in there, so I'm not going to require that now until I get the link filled in. I'm going to save this, and let's take a look at it. So you can see that we already have a space for the email here. And the problem is that every time I click on that, so maybe it doesn't really matter if I have that or not. I'm still going to have to add the entire thing anyway. I'll show you what I mean, because if I click on it, it's going to, you know, go, you know, probably go somewhere. I don't know if it's going to do anything because asterisks are not really part of an email. But maybe I could fix it. Yeah, maybe I could. Okay, that might actually work. So let's go in here and add. Let's see, SM at el4e.com, and so we have all this information, and we have LM at. Now, one thing that we could do here, being this email, you know, we need these to be unique values. So let's go here and take a look at this. So email, we put indexed yes and no duplicates, because if you're generating new emails for an employee, you don't want duplicates, and you wouldn't want duplicates anyway. If you have duplicate emails, that means you might have somebody in there twice. And so on emails, I always have no duplicates on there, and that reduces one probability of error. So if we go down here and, like, say for example, if we have I don't know, let's see, let's say if we have Lisa Jackson, so Lisa Jackson, you know, this is another, and let's make her something different here. So if we do the drop down, you can see we have 4 options, even though there's several in here, because I'll show you what I did here to make it like this. So if I do this, let's add another option here. So let's go with a associate. Let's go with an analyst. And gonna leave the middle name blank again. And so analyst, let's say an analyst makes 55. And so we go here And this, okay, so I forgot to add the age in here. So I could put a default age in here, 17, but I would prefer to leave it blank, because if I skip over that like it did now, I might have the wrong age in there for the person. So this forces me to enter an age. So let's say like Lisa is 32, and so she makes 55. And we go in here, and I want to, I'm going to go in here and add her initials in here, Lisa. As a matter of fact, I put LM up there, but it should have been LJM. But anyway, let's say I accidentally put LM again. Huh, that's strange. It did not. Okay, now see, once I go to the next row, it will not let me finish this row until I correct that. So the only way that I'm going to be able to do that is to go back here and just finish everything. So I'm going to put in here LJ at el4e.com, and so now that should be okay. So is there an LJ up in there too? Because created duplicate values in the index primary key. Okay, so what happened here? Okay, so she's an analyst, and let's give her a middle name now. So Lisa, say it's Marie, and her age is 32, and she makes 55,000. And let's go LMJ at el4e.com. So we shouldn't have any problems now. So yep, we were able to add a second row in here. So the main thing is that we're not able to add duplicates in here on the email. So it prevents us from adding someone in there twice or giving someone the same email by accident. Of course, by the time, once you send this over to your IT department to add an email, they're going to catch it. But, you don't want them to have to, that's one less thing, time saver. You don't want people like coming back to you and say, hey, you added a duplicate email in there. Why don't you, stop doing that? Whoops. So we're in here, and we have, let's look back here at the design view. So we kind of have all this information here, and this is, I know it's like a long series on this, but I kind of want to try to cover multiple things on here. But if you have a question, feel free to drop a line, drop a message below and ask. I'll be glad to help out and provide any details about about any messages. So, or about any information that you need. Whatever you need to know about this, let me know. I'll be glad to help out. And any details on something that I might have glossed over a little bit, or that I didn't cover enough, but I'll be glad to add any type of information to help you build a database better. But I'm going to continue doing videos about this, so there's going to be future videos covering how to do this. So like right now it's a table. I have a previous video explaining all the objects that you deal with in Access. So you might want to watch that if this is your first time and you're not sure what to do here. So explain how these things work. And the next thing we're going to look at is adding a, well, let's go ahead and, I did say that I was going to add another database in here. So let's create a new database. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to create it from the design view. I could create it from the table view too, which will look like this, but I don't think that's a good way to do it. I could go in here and add these fields. I think it's better if you're going to add a database to create it from the design view. So create it from the design view, and I'm just going to add in here, first of all, this is going to be customer ID, so I'm just going to put cus ID, and I'm going to do this the way that I normally do it. I'm not going to do it the other way. This is going to be an auto number, and we're going to make it the primary key. So to make it the primary key, you just click on that key. So we have indexed, yes, it's indexed, and no duplicates. So next thing we're going to do is first name and short text, and I put fifth name, so let's put first name in here, and last name, and middle name. So first name is going to be required, yes. Last name is required, yes. So, and that's it. Nothing. I don't put any captions or anything. Sometimes I do, but usually I do not. So first name, last name, middle name, and I'm going to put, this is for the customer, so I'm going to put company, and just leave it like it is, short text, and let's go city, state, and zip. So I guess I could put address in there too. Now address. Now if you want to, you can just click on the button here, and then just drag this up, drag it up above city. And of course you could put other things in here too. You could put address to line and things like that. There should be enough space for you to add that data in the first row. So zip code, we could put phone, and phone number, even though it is zip code and phone number are numbers, you should leave them as a text. And the reason why is because you might put, you might end up putting dashes and things in there. But the other reason too is the reason why you use a number field is for calculations. So you're not going to calculate a zip code, and you're not going to calculate a phone number. And like, say for example, if you make the zip code all numbers, and somehow your company grows and you start dealing with Canada or or the UK, that means you're going to start dealing with letters too. They put letters in their zip codes, and you're going to deal with different formats. So I just leave it a text, and that way you can change it. And the same thing with phone number too. Phone numbers are just the codes that you need, and you don't add up phone numbers or anything. So you just leave it in a text field. And so we have this basic information. We could put let's see, start, and I usually just put start and that's it. So we make this a date time, um, and I don't know. There's all right. So let's see. What would a good number be? I guess I don't know. We could put the size of the company. So we'll make this one a number, and the let's I don't know annual income, and make this a currency. We might want to kind of know what our customers make. And I don't know. I usually like to try to keep it simple. I'm not sure if annual. I can't remember if annual has two ends or one, but let's just put income. All right. So if I think of something else, I'll think of it later. So we go here to first name, last name. Now companies. Well, actually, like cities, for example. If you're dealing with a local city, like say for example, if most of your customers are in Nashville or something, Raleigh, North Carolina or something like that, you can put your default value as, or if you're dealing with a company that kind of deals in the capital areas or in these big areas, you could put you could actually put a list of all the cities in there if you wanted to, and then have like a drop down with that. But we could put let's say Nashville, Tennessee. So let's go. Nashville is the default city, and that's where most of the people are. And don't really state is going to be the default value of Tennessee. Now, if I want to keep this, I could change this number to 2. That way, if I'm going to use the state codes, but remember, like if you're starting to deal with other countries, that might not be a good idea. Of course, you can add to this. You cannot really take it away. If I decided to change it to 1, it would delete a lot of data. So I would have to. I could go up, but I couldn't go down. So that's one thing to remember. And of course, I could put a drop down for all of the states in here too, and we could. So let's say, for example, let's go back to cities. So I have the default as Nashville, but say for example, if I want to do a drop down, so I could do the main one that most people are going to use is a combo box. Now the query, I could create a value list or a field list, but I could also create a source in here. And so first of all, I'm going to need to save this. So let's save it, and this is going to be called customers. I need to save it before I do what I'm going to do. So say for example, I need to do a drop down, kind of like what I did with, I could create a table that has the cities in it. Of course, I don't know, to put every city in the United States, that would be a big table. And it might, if you're dealing with only like a few local cities in your area, say for example, I've dealt with some companies, and you start out in one city, like Nashville, for example, and then you start picking up customers in Knoxville, Chattanooga, or something like that, or Atlanta, and you start picking up in Birmingham, and start the local cities around the area. You don't need a drop down with every city in the United States, because then you have to go through that entire list to find the city that you want. But and I mean, you could start typing and automatically fill it out, but if you wanted to simplify it, you just put a drop down for this row. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click these three dots over here, and I'm going to open up a query. Now I'm going to pull, I have the two tables here, which the one I'm working on right now is a customer table. I'm going to drag that over here, or double click it, so I can double click it. Now the information I'm dealing with is the cities. Now I could put a drop down for the states too, and that way I could do the same thing with the states, but what I do is just with the customers. So now I'm going to right click it, and this is going to appear totals. So right click it in totals. So I can undo that, but I want totals in here. And the other thing that I want to do is ascending order. And I group it by. So that means that if it's grouped by, that means like, if I have Nashville in there 100 times, Nashville is only going to appear once in this list. So there's going to be only unique values appearing. So, and then I click close, and it's going to ask me to save it. Yes. And I go back here. So now I have a drop down for that. And I could do the same thing with state too. And so just to get some exercise here, practice. So I'm going to go here and do lookup, and we have text box. I'm going to change that to, let's do a list box. I don't like a list box that much, but it kind of works the same way. But I like the other one better. So click on the three dots, but I'll show you why I like the other one better. So now again, I'm going to click customer, and I'm going to drag it over here. It's not dragging over for some reason, but double click it, and then I'm going to go down here to state and pull that down here, and then do the same thing. So I have the state here, and I'm going to hit totals, and it's grouped by, and I'm going to put it ascending. You can put it descending too. It depends on what you're dealing with, but of course ascending is alphabetical order. And once I do that, I'm going to click close. It's going to ask me to save it, and I click yes. So now I have this data in here, and so going back to general, the state is only 2, as you can see. And let's say, for example, the default value is Tennessee, because we're in Tennessee, but maybe we might extend out to Kentucky, Louisiana, and Georgia. I mean, not Kentucky, Alabama, Mississippi, and Georgia. Those are kind of on the state lines. North Carolina, maybe. So let's see a couple other things. Let's look at the age. No, hold up. I'm at the wrong table. So let's go back to customer here. So let's look at the size of the company. And so we have a number in here. And the default value, let's put a validation rule in here. And that, I don't know, I guess it must be greater than 1. If we're doing, that's possible that there's it depends on what kind of company you have, but sole proprietorship. But the validation rule is greater or equal to 1. So greater than or equal to 1. And I could also put greater than 0, but so and I could put the default value as 1, but I want it to force me to add something here. So it must be greater than 0. So that's the message that's going to appear if I make a mistake. So the start date is when I add the customer in here. So let's put the default date equals, let's put now in here. Just kind of show how that works. So now is the exact time. And format is, so the format is, it's going to be something You could have it like different types of dates. The data is still going to be stored the same, but this is just how it's going to appear. So let's just put the default in here as a general date. And I'm not messing with captions this time, but if you want something at the top, you can always put a caption in there. Let's see, no control. Show picker. So let's remove the picker for a date. Never show picker. So we'll save the data. So what that picker is, so we have a default date in here, so that's already appearing, but the finish date is not here. And the finish date has a picker, but I don't have a picker for this one, so I can't like select a date like here. So this one I have to manually type it in there. Now the size is 0, so it shouldn't let me do that. So the first name is Jack, I don't know, Ryder or Jack Piper. And middle name none. Company is I don't know, Acme. And address is First Street. And then city is, I guess I did not put a default in there. So Nashville. And 27. Let's see. Or is it? I think it's 37. Yeah, it's 37. So yeah, that's one of their zip codes anyway. And of course they have the 615. And see, now that this is in a text format, I could put the brackets in there, and I could actually have it store the brackets too. So I could put the placement in there and have it store those brackets. So dash. But because it's a text, I can do all this. I could not do it if it was a number. So I don't have a finish in there, and let's see what happens. So the size must be greater than 0, or so I'm going to put 2 in here, and income is 1, and say a $1 million company. So now, like if I click here, nothing's happening. That's because I need to refresh the data. Now, if I were to close this, if I refresh it, then I'm going to have Nashville pop down here. So let's do Nashville twice here. And once I do one entry, then the ID comes in here. So let's see, we have Jill. Jill Pale, and she also works at Acme. And we could also put drop downs for companies too, because you might not have that many companies. So you don't know the street yet, so they didn't tell us. And they're also in Nashville, and I don't know. And we have there's company size 5, and then we have $2 million company. And so let's say we want to, so still if I do a drop down, Nashville only appears one time. So the drop down also prevents you from making a mistake. Like sometimes if you had to type in Nashville 100 times, you might do one else. So Larry, David, Oh, I actually put it. So I'll put a different value in here. Let's say this one is 8, and I guess this should be a different company. So this is, I don't know, fake name here, and so we have this company down here, and it's going to be MLX, and this one's going to be in let's say this one's in Atlanta. So he's got a contract in Atlanta, GA, and 35630. And let's just 414-555-2222. All right, so it's a lot bigger than the ones before. It's a pretty big company here, $600 million company. And so if I go down here and I hit the drop down, nothing. So there's only Nashville. But see, it only does it. So let's close this, and I'm going to open it back up again. Customers. I could just hit the refresh too, but I just want to show that, like, if you close it. Now, if I go down here and hit the drop down, I've got Atlanta and Nashville. So, once I add, if you add the first name in correctly, then you don't have to worry about making mistakes. So we go ahead and we add in, I don't know, I guess we could add anything in here, but let's go back to, let's actually go back to look at the design view. So we have this design view down here, and we have the state with the default. The city does not have a default in here, which is fine because you might deal with a lot of different cities. So, if I wanted to, another way that I could add some defaults in here, like say for example, if I'm doing a lookup. So instead of doing it this way, let's change this here. I'm going to remove this, and I'm going to add the data that I need in here. I'm going to put a value list. I think, let's see. Okay, so do a value list, and it's asking me to type in each value. So I know that, I'm not going to deal with a lot of states, but so let's say all the states around Tennessee. So Tennessee is one of them. Georgia is one of them. We have Mississippi is one of them. I think it's MS. Alabama is one. Kentucky, KY. So we're going to look at all the states around Tennessee. Tennessee has a lot of states around it, but we have Kentucky, we have North Carolina. I think South Carolina is bordered off it too. South Carolina, and Arkansas, and I think Missouri too. Is that if it's MO? And I don't think Louisiana is, but it's kind of close. So let's just put Louisiana as well. And so we have this is our drop down. Now it's probably going to be in order of this drop down, but you could put it in any kind of order that you want. And you could also change the default value to here. And let's click OK. So this automatically puts in here. You could just type it in here too, but of course you have that tool. It's better just to use that. So now we have this drop down. So let's go back and take a look. It's going to, of course, ask us to save it, and we go back. So now if we're looking at a state, we have this drop down, and we can pick the state that we want, and that makes it a little bit easier. And if those are the only states that we're dealing with, they're close by. And of course, like if you add another state in there, you can go ahead and add it. Like if there's some state that you're never gonna go to, um, we could go back in here and design this. So, I've realized, I'll never do business in Louisiana, um, Missouri, and I think I typed in. Oh, let's see here. Let's look at the zoom. I guess I typed in Alaska. Definitely not Alaska. Probably meant. I don't know how that got in there. So we have Tennessee, Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama, Kentucky, North Carolina, and South Carolina. That sounds good. So those are definitely close by states. So, or or maybe maybe you haven't done. Let's look at here again. So go here and zoom in. Let's say we're pretty far away from, Nashville's pretty far away from North Carolina and South Carolina, so it might be a while before they get to that. You don't want to have to drop down through all those all the time. And so we have Tennessee, Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama. And oh yeah, I put the AK. I guess that was supposed to be Arkansas, but I think Arkansas is AR. That's why. So anyway, I just put down what I'm using at the moment. So say for example, you add another. These are the only states that you're operating in right now. So that's all you want on there, because you don't want to have, you don't want to deal with a lot of information that you don't need to. And so one step at a time. So I go in here, and now when I do the drop down, we just have these places right here. And that way it's a little bit, less possibility of making a mistake. So, and we got, let's say for example, we have Jackson, and I could just type in M and it automatically goes to Mississippi. And I'm not sure what I don't know what the zip code features are, so let's just say it's maybe 39330. I'm just guessing, and I have no idea what any phone numbers are. So 252 or 250 121 or 1515. And there are a lot of different ways that you could do the phone numbers. It depends on what you're wanting to set up. I think, if I could set it up, like if you're only dealing with the U.S., I could set it up. You could set it up so that you have the input mask. And let's just do that. So let's look at an input mask, and okay, we need to change this to 5 and okay, so we need a first name in here. So and company is Mississippi drywall or something. Let's see here. Okay, and then we don't know what the address, but we know it's in Jackson, Mississippi, and we have this phone number here. So let's go in here, and that should be good. So that data is added. Now, as long as, like, say for example, as long as you see this pencil here, you know that the data is not saved. So once you move to the next cell and that pencil disappears, you know that the entry has been made. So until that pencil disappears, this data has not been saved, and if I hit escape, it's gone. I lost it. So that's just one thing to remember. But once you hit that entry in there, once it allows you to do the enter, you put the right numbers and the validation rules are met, it'll save the data. So that's one important thing to remember, to know that it's saved. Now let's look at the design view here, and going back to phone number. So I'm tired of having to put all those dashes in there, so I'm going to go in here and put a validation, an input mask in here. So put the input mask in, and I'm going to put phone number, the very first one at the top. So the next one here is is we have the phone numbers, and you could test it here and give it a try. You know, if you're only dealing with the United States and Canada, this is perfectly fine. Caribbean and places kind of have the same number. Now I could do it without the symbols, but you know, hey, I want the symbols in there because it's easier to keep up with. Now you can also do something to have the symbols pop up in there in certain areas, but let's say you want the symbols in there. So now when I add it, go back to just save it and go back to this view. I'm gonna have to go in. Well, it's adding it in here for me anyway. So this data is added in here, and it's automatic. Now I could also put like a, you know, 1 in front of it if I wanted to, but you know, leaving it like this. So we go with let's go with Mike Jones here, and he's working with I don't know, Kentucky Bluegrass. Well, I guess as long as it's not the KGB. So, and this guy's going to be in I don't know. I can't. There's probably I'm sure there's a Greenville, Kentucky somewhere, but it seems like there's a Greenville everywhere. So all I have to do is hit K, and it's automatically going to fill it in. Of course, when you get to the point where you're having like multiple letters, like, you know, for example, Alabama, Alaska, Arkansas, if you hit an A, it's going to be the first A in the list, and that's what's going to pop up. So you might have to type in AL, but you know, like say for example, if you do A and you have Alabama pop up, then every time you hit Alabama, you just have to hit the A one time. And we go in here into 8990 and 564 222 2115, and the phone number's in there automatically. Got 12 employees, and that's about it. So I just want to give this idea on tables. Like, if you have questions about it, feel free to ask me. And you know, I just want to thank everybody for watching, and I hope this video is helpful for you. So any questions that you have, feel free to let me know. My email is mark@el4e.com. So shoot me an email if you have any questions, and leave a message below, like and comment. Feel free to have any comments you want, and I will do my best to answer your question. I don't know everything, but you know, I'm sure that I could probably come up with something to help you out. And thanks again, and have a good night, and have a good week.